Alrighty, so News of the Week episode on this Thursday evening, and once again, we got a lot of signings, transfer rumors, and some coaching news that has happened in this past week. In fact, one just happened today, and the nightmare offseason for the Loons continue. As Eric Ramsay, the head coach of Minnesota United, is report that he is now going to be leaving the Loons and is going to join English Championship club West Brom. Now, obviously, this was a rumor a couple of days ago that it feels like Eric Ramsay was the top candidate to be the next head coach, or in their case, the next manager for West Bromwich Albion. Now, when I first heard it, I kind of heard this about it last year as well. It looked like they were going to get him as the manager, and I didn't think it was going to be a lot that is in this one, considered eventually it didn't quite worked out. They instead gone with Ryan Mason, but obviously they didn't work out with them with Ryan Mason, and now it seems like the West Brom is going back to the well and try to get Eric Ramsey, and it seems like this time they indeed got him. Now, obviously, as I said before, as devastating as some of the subtraction that Minnesota has had in recent time, I think this one is probably the most devastating one because knowing that we're only a couple weeks before the preseason and knowing what the identity that Eric Ramsey has built to this Minnesota team, it is going to be really tough to try to reverse course that. And I will say that if there is a backup plan for them, they've already mentioned that assistant Cam Nolas might be the top candidate trying to become the new head coach. And don't get me wrong, I do like Cam Nolas. I think he definitely deserved to get a chance, especially with the way that, when he came on an emergency role and did relatively well. I do think that there is a chance that he could at least get a shot in terms of the head coaching role. And the fact that, just a couple of days ago with Wilfred Nancy being dismissed as the Celtic manager, it feels like maybe this could be a chance that Minnesota might capitalize on this opportunity of bringing Wilfred Nancy to the Loons. Which, if Wilfred Nancy does come to Minnesota, man, that will be not only an interesting hiring, but that would be a complete overhaul when it comes to the identity that Eric Ramsey built with this Minnesota team. The ideology and the tactics that Eric Ramsey used for this Minnesota team for the past couple of years is just completely different than what we saw with Wilfred Nancy when he was with Columbus. And I also kind of feel like it's kind of on point because of the way that it seems like the team is kind of going through a transitional period by gutting a lot of their talent, and it feels like they're heading to a new direction with some of these replacement and maybe going through a different game model heading into next year as well. But nevertheless, as I said before, this is a pretty devastating blow, and that if Cam Newell does come in charge of this team, I'm pretty sure that he might still implement some of the ideology that Eric Ramsey, of course, said to this team maybe in the beginning. But there's no doubt that I think in the short time when I saw Cam Newell was the interim head coach of this Minnesota team, it kind of is a little bit opposite of what we see with what Eric Ramsey does, where Cam Newell is kind of a head coach that likes to press. He loves to do the pressing system. We saw it early during his time as an interim head coach. So with the way that this team goes from a low bunkering team and rely heavily on set pieces and counterattack to now a team that kind of wants to press, it is definitely a different transition in terms of that. And I'm not quite sure, of course, it will work, especially with the new batch of player that, of course, we currently have. But again, nevertheless, this is definitely a sad kind of day to see that once again, it's a off season of hell for this Minnesota team, and I cannot wait to do my moving forward series about Minnesota. I think I'm only a couple of episode away by talk about Minnesota in the moving forward series episode because I'm gonna have a field day talking about it, and that video might be 30 plus minutes long because man, oh man, we got a lot to go over in terms of talk about the Loons and the uncertainty that this team face heading into this upcoming season. And I also wouldn't blame the fact that, from what I heard from the so-called expert in MLSsoccer.com saying that this team might not make the playoffs or their contending window is probably slammed shut. I don't blame them if they say that because again, with all the question and uncertainty with this team, I would not be surprised if this team regress badly heading into next season, and I won't be surprised if some of the decision that they made in terms of overhauling the roster might come back to bite them heading into this upcoming season. Now, moving on. So, Laurent Courtois, the former Montreal head coach, it seems like he's going back to Columbus. So he was the assistant for Columbus Crew before going to Montreal, and obviously that didn't quite work out. Well, now it seems like he is going to be returning to where he started, and I think this is a good move for Laurent Courtois. Not only getting himself back to a familiar standpoint, though it's kind of interesting that he's going back there without the guidance of Wilfred Nancy. And I'm also wondering that for Columbus in case if the new head coach that they bring in Reichstrom might not work out, maybe Laurent Courtois will step straight in terms of being the head coach or the interim head coach for this Columbus team. And if that, of course, would be the case, I don't think that's a bad idea. Considering Columbus, I'm wondering with the way that with their new head coach Reichstrom, whether or not if they're gonna still implement the same ideas that Nazi implement. In case, of course, if it's something completely different, it doesn't really quite work out, then Lauren Courtois can always go back to the way Nancy team likes to do because between him and Warford Nancy, both of them kind of use the same tactics in the same way, and the reason why I think it didn't quite work out with Montreal is the fact that Montreal just does not have the player to do so. I mean, Columbus definitely has the talented player where Nancy can have the ability to do so, but because of the way that Montreal doesn't have that, and also the player seems like they hated the way that Courtois trying to set up his team similar to what Nancy did with Columbus. Yeah, when you have a team with players that don't trust the formula and the tactics that the head coach has set, it is no wonder why Courtois tenure with Montreal was kind of a bit of a failure. So yeah, with him coming back there and knowing the fact that the players would know the Nazi system in case if Courtois does take over as the head coaching role, I think this is a good move in general for the Columbus Crew. It's almost like they know that there's already kind of a backup plan or just one step ahead in case if they're the new head coach that they brought in doesn't really quite work out. Now, moving on in terms of some of the signings, and we had a lot of them once again. So the Seattle Sounders have acquired Nikola Pekovic on loan from Charlotte FC. Now, Nikola Pekovic, I mean, he didn't really quite work out during his time with Charlotte. More of that is mainly because Dean Smith hasn't really given some of the youngster a chance, and especially giving him too much chance in that midfield as well. To be fair, that midfield is kind of a little bit stacked, so that's why he's kind of had a tough time in terms of cracking into the starting 11. Now, him going to Seattle, I'm not quite sure that might help him consider their midfield at times could be also a little bit stacked. And you wonder if this is kind of a move that Seattle is thinking in advance in case if Ober Vargas does get sold off as soon as the summer transfer window because I don't think they really need another midfielder unless they know one of their better midfielders is going to be moving on, and that is definitely a possibility because with the way that there's already a lot of interest with Ober Vargas both down in Liga MX and even in Europe as well. I wouldn't be surprised if this is kind of like a backup plan that, well, in case if Vargas does get sold off, then Pekovic can definitely stepped in and finally get a chance to show what he is made of. I mean, there is definitely a lot of potential that this kid has, but it really never quite worked out during his time with Charlotte. Now, FC Cincinnati have signed Kyle Smith off the free agency. They also acquired defender Felix Samson on loan from Montreal, so that's a pair of defenders that they of course got, and most likely both of those players are more for depth reason. Though for Kyle Smith, obviously we know the time that he has with Orlando City, how well loved it is when with that fan base, and it's kind of sad if you're an Orlando City fan seeing the team move on from him. But hey, at least he is going back home. He is a Cincinnati native, and the last time when Cincinnati decided to sign a Cincinnati native, yeah, let's say to say that it definitely worked out for them. I mean, Nick Hagglund has definitely been immense in that spot. And while I know Kyle Smith is not the similar in terms of quality wise compared to Nick Hagglund is, he's a good backup option for Cincinnati, and especially with the way that they've had issue in terms of staying healthy at the back. And some of their defenders always tends to miss time. I think it was pretty clear that they need to booster that depth in the center back position, and Kyle Smith is definitely a good option to do so. And then, of course, them getting Felix Sampson. He's a relatively young player from Montreal. I believe he come out of the academy as well, and he's definitely a raw talent as well. Definitely had some potential, as you usually see with players coming out of that of the Montreal Academy, and we'll see how he's going to do and whether or not if he's going to get some more minutes. Now, the Colorado Rapids, they have acquired midfielder Hamzet, and I think it's Genderin, if that's how you pronounce. I'm absolutely butchered that, didn't I? I'll definitely get a bet better, or I'll just call by his first name Hanzak because it seems easier to pronounce. But he is coming from RC Lons, a team in League and it feels like this is probably their starting central defensive midfielder as well, and the guy that they're hoping that will definitely protect the back line of this Rapids team. I mean, defense is definitely one of the biggest need that the Colorado Rapids need this offseason, and it feels like maybe they got a guy that will definitely help protect that back line and definitely help stop leaking as so many goals as the Rapids did last season as well. And then the Columbus Crew have signed midfielder Sekou Bangora. I think that's how you pronounce from Hapoel Ikret Shimoda. Just absolutely butcher that name try didn't I? But nevertheless, this feels like it's more of a depth signing. I mean, anytime when you get a guy from Israel, and I've seen a lot of teams have done that where they've gone to the Israeli Premier League to try to get some talent. It has worked out pretty well, surprisingly. There's been a lot of good players coming from the Israeli league, and especially a lot Israeli player that has come to MLS and have done well in this league. So yeah, something tells me that could be the same case in this situation, albeit it's probably more just for a depth reason rather than a starting role. Now, the Philadelphia Union has signed Alejandro Bedoya to a new contract extension. So it's kind of interesting because, there's been talks that Bedoya might think about retiring, especially, I think last season there was definitely serious talk that he was thinking about hanging up his boots. Didn't quite happen. He decided to stay another year, but now seems like he's going to do it again. He's going to stay another season. I know that eventually he is going to call in, and I think it could be as soon as by the end of this season as well. But there was no doubt that he wasn't going anywhere else if his contract does expire. I mean, when his contract does expire, I think he's just gonna write out retire as the Philadelphia Union because he's a legend with that club. I mean, just a guy that will definitely go down as one of the greatest Union player to ever play with this team, and definitely will have a statue in front of Super Park alongside with Sebastian Leto in the near future if they decide to build statue in front of Subaru Park. Atlanta has announced that they have transferred Bata Schlicht to Bromby for about $3 million. Now, I'm kind of surprised it's only $3 million. I would have assumed it probably would be a little higher price, considering Bata Schlicht was probably one of the more promising and one of the more consistent player last season of a disastrous season that Atlanta, of course, has had. But there's no doubt that I've heard that he wants to go back to Europe, and it seems like it's like Bromby is definitely a good team for him to join. It's kind of interesting that I've seen teams have decided to do business with Bromby of bringing some players coming to MLS, and now it feels like it's the other way around, where now we're seeing an MLS player that is going to that team, and for about $3 million, it's definitely a bit of a far cry in terms of what we used to see with Atlanta. Used to develop some good young talent before shipping off to Europe for a huge sum of money. But still, it's a good amount, and especially with the way that Atlanta, you look at some of the transfer that they've done, it feels like they're kind of bringing some nostalgia back in terms of trying to get some good young South American player, develop them, and eventually sell them off for a sum, and hope that of course worked out. We shall see if that of course is going to be the case heading in to this upcoming season. I mean, the most important thing for Atlanta, not just because of the nostalgia reason, but they're just hoping that some of their most under achieving players, some of their more talented player that really underachieved this past season, will definitely come at least close to live up to their potential. I mean, look at you, Latte Laugh, and also Renchek, and even Saba Lochanidze. Those guys absolutely need to have a better season heading into this year because last season, all three of those guys I mentioned had a pretty disastrous season and was kind of the big reason why Atlanta went up to be one of the worst team in the East and eventually cost Ronnie Daly a job as well. Now, Nashville SC, they have waived Tyler Boyd today. Now, this is not a big surprise considering that, with the way that Christian Espinoza, with him signing with Nashville SC, it feels like most likely the casualty in terms of Espinoza coming in to Nashville. is Tyler Boyd is probably going to be moving on somewhere else. And speaking of which, speaking of Christian Espinoza, that's going to be finally the destination that he's gone. So after over a month and a half of radio silent of whether or not if Espinoza was going to come back to the Quakes or not, well, I think a couple of days ago we did hear that Espinoza did have a thank you letter to Quakes fans as well, which kind of confirms the fact that he is not coming back. But it was always going to be interesting to see where he was going to go to, and now it seems like Nashville was the team to do so. And good on Nashville in terms of capitalizing this. I mean, this is a team that it is pretty clear that they're definitely building something special, and I believe this might be the next team I'm going to talk about in my moving forward series episode. Where I think this last season, despite the first round exit, there is no doubt in my mind that had they not played Inter Miami in the first round, that team would have definitely gone deeper. And what BJ Gallahan is definitely building with that team is something special. And something that will definitely be considered to be one of the top dog heading into this upcoming season to try to match Inter Miami to face, and getting Christian Espinoza will definitely be a huge addition to that. But that also means that there's really no space for Tyler Boyd to play, and Tyler Boyd during his time with Nashville, it just really never worked out. I mean, I thought it could have worked out a couple of years ago, especially of what he did with the Galaxy, but unfortunately injuries kind of just ruined him, and now it's going to be interesting to see where Tyler Boyd is going to go. I wouldn't be surprised it might go back to the Galaxy. I mean, with the way that he did very well during his time with the Galaxy, and especially if he can stay healthy, he can definitely be a dynamic player for that team as well, and especially with the way that Ricky Pooch is now done for the season once again after going under the knife once again to repair his like knee that torn his ACL just a couple of years ago. Wouldn't be surprised if it makes perfect sense for the fact that the Galaxy are gonna look to try to get Tyler Boyd and kind of almost play in the spot that Ricky Pooch basically left. Now, speaking of former Nashville players, so Jacob Schaffelberg is signed with LAFC, but unfortunately, there's some bad news for LAFC. So after they announced the signing of Jacob Schaffelberg, they found out that he has to undergo going surgery. Now, the good news is the timeline says that he's going to be out for 8 weeks, which means that if you look at the calendar, it seems like he's probably going to be out at least for the first round in the CONCACAF Champions Cup and maybe in the first couple of games of the season. But he also will be out with the during his time with the Canadian national team in the near future as well. But yeah, that's definitely a bit of a blow for LAFC. But again, the good news is at least this is happening near when the off season is still going on, and we're still just about to get ready before preseason. But that being said, it's going to be interesting to see how he can integrate in this team, and especially when you're signed a new team and you don't have a preseason to prepare and coming off of an injury, that does get a little tougher to try to integrate to a team than it is when you have a full preseason. So I'll be very interesting to see that once Schaffelberg does come back from his injury, whether or not Mark Dos Santos will find a way to try to integrate to this team, because he's definitely a big weapon for this LAFC side, especially adding more speed to this LAFC side. It seems like from what we'll see this season with Mark Dos Santos, maybe stick with the same formula that Steve Cherundolo has, which is kind of become a bit of a counter attacking team, and I think that's kind of the reason why they brought Schaffelberg in the first place, because he's a very speedy player, especially down the wing. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, now I'll talk about transfer rumors. So there is actually conflicting reports suggesting that Inter Miami was going to get Tristan Blackman. However, Tom Bogert have mentioned that it seems like that report is completely false, and that Vancouver is trying every way to try to retain Tristan Blackman this offseason and not selling him to Inter Miami. Now, good on Vancouver in terms of doing that. I think as many MLS fans are kind of tired of seeing this offseason with Inter Miami, seems like they're rating every single talented player in their team and trying to form a super team, not only to defend their MLS Cup title, but also win the CONCACAF Champions Cup as well. And that, if this move does happen, I mean, that just kind of continue to confirm the fact that Inter Miami is just getting power hungry, and that fans are going to continue to be very upset the fact that how in the world is this still allowed to happen? Like, how Inter Miami must have unlimited resources, and is Don Gabbard that well love in terms of Inter Miami the fact that he's kind of waiving some of the rules that Inter Miami should be following, but they're breaking. I mean, what's kind of interesting is that Inter Miami isn't really breaking the rules. I mean, when you look at the roster they build, yes, they have a lot of talented player on their team, but they're still falling within the rules. I mean, there is actually an article that I found out that is there's a way to like explaining why exactly Inter Miami is still kind of following the rules despite all these moves that they of course have made. But again, I give credit to the Vancouver Whitecaps of saying no to that, and it makes perfect sense too. Because why would the Whitecaps decide to let go of their best defender and decided to let go of them to the team that they literally lost in MLS Cup? I mean, no way in the world the Vancouver Whitecaps are going to do that, especially for a team that is looking to try to make it back to that stage as soon as next season as well. So yeah, again, credit to Vancouver, of course, doing that. Though of course it kind of makes it easier for Vancouver to do that compared to other team because the Whitecaps have proven that this team has a winning culture, and especially I know for Tristan Blackman, I know he's tempted to play alongside with Messi and maybe trying to do the old if you can't beat them, join them kind of mentality. But I think deep down he loved to stay with the Whitecaps, and especially again for the Vancouver Whitecaps, they're definitely building something special up there, and that this is going to be a team that even with some of the talent that they lost this off season, losing Ali Ahmed and Jaden Nelson is definitely going to be a bit of a blow in the winger position. But I do trust the fact that Jasper Sorensen's side in this Whitecap team will figure out how to make some adjustment, and especially the fact that even with those two players that they lost, they're still a very talented team up and down their roster. Now, speaking of Inter Miami, so they're now finalizing a deal to sign Portland Timbers midfielder David Agela for $2 million. So speaking of the devil, like I said about how Inter Miami seems like they're afford to raid every single team and sign their best player. This is kind of the same case again. Though I will say that as I mentioned, in my moving forward series talk about the Timbers, David Agela, his time with the Timbers has been mediocre at best, and I'm not surprised the fact that the Timbers are looking to move on from him, and I know them selling to Inter Miami and continue to feed that machine might not be the best choice to do so, but hey, they'll definitely take it, especially trying to reshape their midfield. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that now with him going there. I don't know if he's going to get some starting minutes there because again, that midfield is just completely stacked right now. But no doubt that David Ajala would be a great depth option, and that yeah, like I said, for this Inter Miami team, it's a super team right now of what we see heading into this season, and there's a reason why. There's a lot of hate that is going on. There are a lot of people are comparing this Inter Miami team, this what they do in this offseason to what the LA Dodgers did the last offseason as well. And I can understand why, because the Dodgers are a team that tends to rate every single talented player in the free agency market. And the only difference is that the MLB doesn't have a salary cap, so the Dodgers, of course, can afford to do that. Whereas in MLS, because of all the cap restraint and the roster rule, this is kind of where a lot of people are kind of questioning how in the world is Inter Miami able to do that. And then a lot of people are crying foul the fact that it's pretty clear that they breached some of their rules, even though, as I said before, there is an article that kind of explains why they've been able to balance that. And as I mentioned, with Nashville, of course, setting to sign Christian Espinosa. I'm actually going to skip this one. I probably should have put this right next to talk about Nashville SC waving Tyler Boyd. But speaking of Inter Miami again, they're also looking to sign Tati Olande to a permanent deal as well. And what's kind of interesting that it seems like this is going to be a TAM deal instead of a DP deal, which again that just shows you how crazy it is. I mean, with the production that Tati Olande did, especially during that playoff run where he really single-handedly at times carried this attack in terms of his goal scoring. I mean, this is an incredible deal, but also kind of a deal that only happens because of the way that Inter Miami is just such a super team right now, and that we see a lot of players maybe take some pay cut just to join this team because again, in order to do that, a lot of players wants to take some team friendly deals so that they can make sure that this super team does happen and will have a chance to compete for multiple trophies heading to this upcoming season. And yeah, that's kind of one of the big reasons why I think Inter Miami is still applying the rule, despite the fact that, as I said, lot of people are calling foul and feel like Inter Miami has broke a lot of rules just to make this roster work. Now, moving on, the New England Revolution is report to interest in signing former DC United midfielder Griffin Yao. Now, this one is not a big surprise considering that again, New England is definitely getting younger heading into this upcoming season. I mean, when they signed Marco Mitch this offseason as their head coach and a guy that is known to be developing being some young talent, consider he was with the US U20 uh team as a head coach. I'm not surprised New England is going to that youth development kind of route. Now Griffin Yao isn't as young as he used to be, but he is a guy that definitely has done well doing his time in Belgium, and it's kind of interesting for a guy that has done pretty well overseas. That usually we say when players decide to come back to MLS. After going to Europe, it's usually when they don't do well in Europe. So I'm fascinated to see if New England can pull this off, but we'll see whether or not if that, of course, will happen. Now, another interesting report that I've heard is the fact that Hector Herrera looks like he's going to come back to MLS, and not only he's coming back to MLS, but he's going to rejoin the Houston Dynamo. Now, that is kind of crazy to see, considering that with him going to Liga MX, I thought he was going to probably retire down there in Mexico, but nope. It seems like he's going to come back to MLS. And keep in mind, he does still have that suspension that he has to serve after that spitting incident that pretty much of what we thought ended his time in MLS and ended his time with the Houston Dynamo in a kind of unceremonious way. But if the Dynamo does decide to re-sign him, I mean, I guess one maybe for nostalgia reason and maybe get fans back into watching this team play, especially Butts in the seat, but also the fact that they're hoping that he's going to be their main playmaker, like the Dynamo was a couple of years ago. And I'm not quite sure if that, of course, would work out. I mean, he is definitely getting up there in terms of the age, and that we'll see whether or not if he have that same impact. Though one thing that the Houston Dynamo have also lately reported, and this one probably might actually come true, and that of course is them getting Mateusz Bogusz from Liga MX. So Mateusz Bogusz, it's no surprise that his tenure down in Liga MX hasn't been well. In fact, there hasn't really been a lot of MLS players that have gone to Liga MX and done well doing their time there. Like I look at all these transfers that Liga MX team have got from MLS player, and I'm kind of surprised that I think now that's kind of understandable why Liga MX team are not asking more money from MLS team when they get some of their players to play south of the border because most of them don't really quite work out. And Mateus Bogusz is another example of that. Didn't really quite work out during his time with Cruz Azul, and now it seems like he's coming back to MLS. And I wouldn't have thought the Houston Dynamo was the team to do so. I thought maybe LAFC, but think about bringing him back. Now, that being said, with the way that not only they submit this bid, but they also are looking to make him a DP player. And I don't recall when Bogusz was with LAFC, he was actually a designated player. And there's no doubt that if Bogusz can perform the same way he did at LAFC compared to what he did with the Dynamo, then I think it's definitely worth the DP tag. But it's also kind of interesting the fact that the one of the reason why Bogusz did very well with LAFC, he was on a very good team. This Houston team is not that good team, especially on the attacking game front. So I'm very interested to see now that he's kind of being in this situation. Though again, I think with the addition of Hector Herrera, that could definitely helps Bogusz a little bit. Consider if Herrera is going to bring that creative kind of point that he did during his time with the Dynamo back to this team. But it'll be very interesting to see where the Dynamo are heading, and the fact that I think Dynamo fans are just happy the fact that this team is kind of making them some move, especially fixing the attack. That's been something that this team and Dynamo fans has been trying for this team to do throughout this entire offseason. And hey, it seems like that might start to come fruition for this team heading into this offseason. Now, Toronto FC is report to sign William Yarbrough off a free agency. Now, if they do decide to get him, I don't think he's going to be a starting goalkeeper for this team. I mean, if they decide to make him a starting goalkeeper, that is a huge downgrade compared to Sean Johnson. I mean, William Yarbrough was considered one of the worst goalkeeper before he departed with the Quakes. And there's no doubt that I think Gavron is definitely going to get the starting role, and I think he deserved it too because during his time with Toronto FC when Sean Johnson wasn't playing, he actually looked decent in a backup role, and now that Johnson is no longer on this team, I think it only makes sense for him to get promoted in terms of the number one position because again, it would make absolutely no sense if Toronto decided to get Yarbrough as the starting goalkeeper because, like I said, during his time with the Quakes, he was so bad during his time with the Quakes that Quakes fans absolutely demand the front office to release him because of how bad he is. And yeah, again, I think this is just more for a goalkeeping depth reason and not really for them to have this as the answer to Sean Johnson because if that is the case, if the beginning of the season and Toronto FC decided to put William Yarbrough as the starting goalkeeper, I'm pretty sure TFC fans will absolutely riot and once again asking what are we doing in terms of trying to to stall and kind of slow down this good progress that we're showing for these past couple of years in terms of this deep rebuild that we're going through. Now, FC Cincinnati, they have finalizing a deal to sign Brian Ramirez from LDU Quito. Now, this feels like it's more of a depth signing, especially in the midfield than it is. I don't know too much about this player. Now, it's also important to know that he is coming from a team that recently done well, not only in the Ecuadorian league, but also I believe they also done well in some of the premier competition in South America as well. So yeah, I think this could be a good signing for Cincinnati, but more likely this may be just for a depth signing in the near future. And then the U.S. men's national team have actually recently, or there's actually been a recent leak in terms of the World Cup jersey that the U.S. men's national team has released. Now, unfortunately, I don't have my phone with me, but I'll let you go look it up. And in fact, if you just type in U.S. men's national team World Cup jersey, you would actually see the leak itself. It's kind of like a World Show jersey, though. It does kind of have a wavy kind of lines, which again, I'm not quite sure depending on how you look at it, does it actually work out? And it's also important to know it is a Nike design jersey, so when it's a Nike's design jersey, it's usually not going to be good because Nike hasn't had a great reputation in terms of designing jersey recently. So yeah, we'll see if this, of course, is the jersey that the U.S. of course will be wearing, and if that is the case, I might buy buy one. I'll probably buy a replica one just because of this upcoming World Cup that is going on. But yeah, we'll see whether or not if that, of course, is going to be the one that the U.S. of course are going to be wearing for this upcoming World Cup. And then last but not least, so the USL and the Players Association has now resumed talk after CBA has expired in the beginning of the year. And if you wonder why the USL haven't released the schedule in terms of the time of kickoff for all these games, well, this is the reason why it is the case. There is still a little uncertainty heading into this season of whether or not if they can get the CBA ratified and renew as soon as possible. I mean, we already talked about the situation of why it's taking this so long. Obviously, the Players Association is very upset in terms of the way that the USL is not giving them enough pay, and especially with the way that there's no health insurance in the USL. That's been the one that the Players Association is pushing hard to try to remediate. So yeah, we'll see whether or not if they eventually will ratify that. Because can you imagine the fact that the USL could potentially go for a lockout and how much that would be such an embarrassment to USL, especially with the way that they're really pushing hard in terms of trying to get this promotion or relegation system going as soon as possible, and especially pushing this first division to get going as soon as possible. But unfortunately, there's been a lot of speed bump along the way, and one of the big speed bump obviously is the fact that the players. As much as they're excited, the fact that the USL is going to have a first division that's going to rival MLS in terms of being the top tier of US soccer, it won't really matter if the players are saying that, well, if we're going to go toe to toe with MLS, we should be receiving almost similar pay of what MLS player does. Most importantly, we should definitely get health insurance, guarantee that because MLS for a long time has always guaranteed health in insurance, and it just kind of feels very amateur, and also kind of downright malpractice. The fact that USL still have not been able to mandate health insurance for all these players to get, especially with the amount that these players are earning. It is kind of criminal. The fact that health insurance is not part of that deal as well, and this is why the USLPA has been pushing hard to trying to get that done, especially for this upcoming CBA, and we'll see if both sides can agree upon itself before the season begin. But there you have it. That is pretty much it when it comes to this week's News of the Week episode. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of these news video, and if there's any news I didn't mention here on the board. As always, let me know in the comments below as always. But until then, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next time.